All right, Cadet Tech Sergeant Hollingsworth, this is your Chapter 5 drill test. I'd like you to start by describing how you would get the flight to fall into formation.
I would call flight fall in, and they would go to dress right dress.
All right, and describe how you would check the dress and alignment of the flight.
I would turn at a 45-degree angle, and to go to the first element leader of the first element, the element leader of the first element. I would check the alignment and make any adjustments that are necessary. Then I would move on to the second element.
Okay. And once they are all dressed and aligned, what command would you give the flight?
Ready front.
Okay. How would you command the flight to open up, say if you were about to perform an inspection?
I would call open ranks march. Open ranks march.
Okay. And what do let's assume there's 4 elements here. What do the 4 elements do on the command of execution for open ranks march?
The first element takes 3 steps forward. The second element takes 2 steps forward. The third element takes 1 step forward, and the fourth element stays in place.
Okay. And upon getting to that position, taking the required number of steps, what do the members of the flight do?
They would do an automatic dress right dress.
Okay. And to bring them back into normal interval, what command would you give?
Close ranks march.
And what would the various elements do in that case?
First element would stay where they are. The second element would take 1 step forward. Third element would take 2, and the fourth element would take 3.
Okay. Let's say you have your flight on the march now. How would you command them to perform a flanking maneuver to the right or to the left, and how would they execute it?
A right flank maneuver would be called on the right foot. It would everyone would simultaneously pivot on the ball of the left foot and and pivot at a 90-degree angle on the ball of the left foot.
Okay. And what's the command? What's the preparatory command, and what's the command of execution for a right flank?
The preparatory command is right flank. Command of execution is march.
Okay. Now, instead of a flanking movement, let's say that you're wanting to move your flight in a column to the right. What would be the command, and how would they execute it?
I would call column right march. The fourth element leader would immediately turn, pivot on the ball of the left foot at a 90-degree angle to the right. The third element would pivot at a 45-degree angle to the right and take 2 steps, pivot another 45-degree angle, and go to half step.
Okay.
The third element would pivot 45-degree angle, take 4 steps, pivot at another 45-degree angle to the right, and go into half steps.
Okay, that's the second element, right? All right, and the first element?
The first element would pivot at a 45-degree angle, take 6 steps, pivot at another 45-degree angle to the right, and go to half step until the flight sergeant called out forward march.
Very good. Okay. So for a column right, on which foot is the command of execution called?
Column right is called on the right foot.
Okay. Your flight is still on the march, and you need to reverse them and go in the opposite direction. What is the command that you call?
To the rear march.
Okay. And on what foot is that command given?
The right foot.
And how does the flight execute it?
Take a step with the left foot, then another step with the right foot. Take another step with the left foot, then turn around.
How many degrees?
180.
Okay.
180 degrees. And keep marching.
Okay. Your flight is now halted, and they are in line formation, and they need to, you need to move the flight to the left. What would be the command that you give the flight to have them take steps to the left?
Left steps march.
Okay. And how do they execute that?
They'd open, close until I did the open, close, march until I would call flight halt. They take one more step and then close, and that would be the halt.
Okay. So describe for me in a little bit more detail what you mean with open and close.
They would step with their left foot, then step and close the gap with their right foot.
Okay. Your flight is in column formation, and you want to extend them out at the halt. Describe the command that you would give and how the various elements would perform the command.
I would call extend ranks march, and the first element would take 3 steps out. No, that's not right.
Remember, this is at the halt.
It would take, first element would take 6 steps out. The second element would take 4 steps out. Third element would take 2 steps out. The fourth element would stay where they were.
Okay. And are those side steps?
Those are side steps, sir.
Okay. Let's say now that you are marching in extended formation, and you wanted to close the flight back down to normal interval on the march. What would be the command, and how would the elements perform?
I would call close ranks, march, and the fourth element would keep marching, would actually immediately go to half step. The third element leader would turn, the third element would turn at a 45-degree angle towards the fourth element, take 1 step, and turn at another 45-degree angle back parallel with the fourth element. The second element would pivot 45 degrees, take 3 steps, pivot another 45 degrees, and walk parallel with the third element. And the first element would pivot 45 degrees, take 5 steps, pivot again, and go to forward march.
Okay. Your flight is now marching along, and you need to direct them to change step. What would be the command?
Change step march.
And how do they perform that?
It is called on the left foot, and step out with the left foot, bring the right foot up. The toe of your right foot is level with the heel of your left foot. We take another step with the left foot and keep marching.
Okay. And your flight is halted in column formation, and you need to form them into one single file, left or right, up to you. How would you command the flight to perform this, and what steps would the elements take?
I would call column of files from the right. The first element leader would say forward, while the rest of the element leaders say stand fast. and then the flight sergeant would tell them would give the command of execution march. The first element would start marching.
Okay.
And the second element, looking at a 45-degree angle over his shoulder, would call the command to march when the last cadet in the first element is passing.
Okay.
And so on and so forth.
Okay. Very good. Anything else you'd like to add? All right.